Welcome to another episode of Biz Takeout's Biz Community Soundbite Sides News to Go, made possible by the IIE Rosebank College, an educational brand of the Independent Institute of Education, or the IIE, dedicated to providing students with a solid foundation, creating future thinkers to build successful careers. I'm your host, Angie White, and today Lillian Bususu, the Graduate Placement Manager at the IIE Rosebank College, takes us through the ins, outs, and benefits of creating an excellent cover letter and CV. Lillian, once again, welcome.
Thank you so much, Angie. I'm so excited to be here once again.
Always great to have you on the show. So Lillian, let's start with the first question. Can you tell us what a cover letter is and why it's so important?
Okay, Angie, before I actually explain what a cover letter is, let me just say this, that the two documents, the cover letter and the CV are what we call introduction letters, because you are introducing yourself to a potential employer who has no clue of who you are, who has never met you, and what you're trying to do is to actually convince this reader that you're the best candidate for the job through what you write on your cover letter and also on your CV. So that's very important to note, because once you take it as an introduction letter, you want to always introduce yourself as the best person to whoever you're introducing yourself. So the one that we're going to start with, obviously, is the cover letter, which is also, like I said, an introduction letter. So this letter, the cover letter, it actually accompanies your CV, creating that first impression of who you are. And the purpose of a cover letter is to actually add that personal touch to your application. So it must be kept professional. It's like you're writing a professional business letter, and the font that you have on that cover letter should actually match the font that is also on your CV. And this document is very important because you're briefly summarizing who you are, and you're also inviting this potential employer, the reader, to read your CV through the cover letter. So it's like an appetizer to the main course, and it should actually complement and not duplicate your CV, but it must complement your CV. So you must think of a cover letter as that sales pitch, that will market your credentials and also help you to get those interviews. So it needs to be very impressive, and you need to provide a detailed information on why you're qualified for that particular position that you're applying for, and also for the job that you're applying for. So it needs to be customized in such a way that it suits every job application that you are applying for. So it must contain the following before it to make sense, so that people can make sense out of what you're writing, and you are wanting to introduce yourself in such a manner that whoever is reading it will understand who you are. So it must have an introduction. So you start this letter by that introduction by stating why you're applying for that particular position and who you are, and then it must have a body, and this body must not be too long. It must actually be in a form of a paragraph or two, to explain why you're actually interested in that job and why you would make an excellent candidate for that position. So you must include things like your qualifications, especially the qualifications that are listed on that job advert, if you're responding to a job advert. And it must also explain why you actually list, why you qualify for that, or why you meet those qualifications. And the end must be closing. You must actually close that cover letter, and you actually restate how your skills and how your experience, how your qualifications fit for that position. So you state how you appreciate that opportunity to be interviewed, and also to thank them for that consideration in advance. So that's how you actually close that letter. So it must have an introduction, a body, and then a closing. And then you must put your signature. Sometimes we don't put our signatures because we need to know if you're the right person that is writing this letter. So you must end it with your signature, followed by your type name, and obviously your contact information should be on that first on that cover letter, and it should the potential employer must actually see. So before you even press that send button, you must polish that letter by proofreading it for any spelling mistakes or grammatical errors, and even to ask somebody, who knows about CV writing or cover letter writing, to make sure that they proofread it to see if there's anything that is not in line with what the potential employer is looking for. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what a cover letter is all about.
Great, thanks, Lillian. And on that note, what are the absolute essentials that need to be included in a CV?
Okay, the essentials that we should have, in fact, before I even go to the essentials, I think I just want to talk about the three types of letters that one should have, the cover letters that are there. The first one is when you're actually responding to a job advert. So this is a letter that actually accompanies your application, and you are responding to a job opening. So it should be a one-pager which gives you details on why you're responding to that advertised job and how you could actually add value to the organization. And in that letter, you actually highlight your skills, your traits, and you showcase your personality, how you can be an asset to that organization. So you actually demonstrate how you will add value by quantifying your success through specific accomplishments. So try to use, keywords that are noted in the job advertisement, and that are relating to your skills and experiences. And that way, the employer can actually see that you match the required job requisites. So you must make that first one, exciting, and you make sure that you're not actually duplicating on what is on the CV. So that's the first cover letter that is there. And then the second one is when you are actually prospecting or inquiring about a possible position, in an organization. So this is like a random sort of like cover letter that you're just sending, maybe to a company that is hiring, but they have not advertised those jobs. So when you send this letter, it actually shows that you are being proactive and you have a genuine interest in that company, and then they will look at your CV, obviously, and if they are to hire you, so that at least this letter is sort of like an introduction for a job that is not there. But sometimes, employers actually keep that CV. And the third one is actually a letter that you write when you are being referred by somebody. So somebody may tell you that a certain organization is hiring, or maybe that person actually works there. So this is a letter that you're actually sending. It's a cover letter where you're actually talking about, I was referred by somebody on the job openings that you currently have, and I qualify, I have the experience, I have the skills for that particular job opening. So that kind of a letter should actually have the title referred by, and maybe you actually put the name of that person to introduce yourself, and then to provide the contact details of who you are. So the things that you actually need to keep in mind, when it comes to cover letter writing, it must be real. It's about your qualifications, how you qualify for that particular job. It's about your personality. So sometimes you find that people are just sharing irrelevant information. This cover letter should not have that irrelevant personal information about yourself or your family. You need to be factual in everything that you're actually providing on that cover letter, because facts these days, they are verified through many platforms. And also in a cover letter, you must not use unnecessary jargon or over-flattering language, because a potential employer can actually look at this as being arrogant or even being conceited. So you need to be sure that you're using the language that is acceptable. And you also must ensure that you have the right name, because it's very, I think, annoying to potential employers that you are just putting a name that is not mine, and yet maybe an advert gives you the name of the person, or maybe because you are applying for so many jobs, you have the wrong company and you have the wrong name. That is unacceptable. So you need to make sure that you have the right name of the person that is actually receiving these CVs, or also the name of the company. And also try and avoid any negative comments about your current or past employer, because this can be deemed as an indication of you bringing into an organization, that bad energy, or maybe you have an attitude or performance problem. So when it comes to cover letters, keep them positive. So that's what I have to say, Angie, about cover letters.
Great, thanks, Lillian. Definitely interesting to hear about the different types of cover letters. I certainly never thought about it that way. So thank you for that information. And then onto the next aspect of your application process. What are the essentials that need to be included in your actual CV?
Okay, people need to understand that a CV is your first interview with the prospective employer. So it's actually a document that sells you. It's a marketing document. It's a document that you are saying, this is who I am. Because remember, this potential employer does not know you. They have no clue of who you are. So that document is actually giving them an overview of who you are. Because a decision for an employer to interview you is based on the quality of your CV. So those first impressions are actually made between 10 to 30 seconds. So it's very important to give good first impressions. They need to be positive so that it increases your opportunity to be called for an interview. So you need to take time to stand out to an employer by making sure that the way your CV is actually done, it's in such a way that it's inviting the potential employer to invite you for an interview. So it should contain relevant information, because remember, your cover letter is an introduction to your CV. So a CV should contain now what you've been saying on your cover letter. So a CV should actually contain things like your contact information, because many people forget their contact information. Sometimes we find that employees or job seekers, they actually forget to put who they are, their names. They've just got a document. So that is very important, your contact information, so that we get to know who you are and we can actually call you if we need to call you. And then it must also have your academic history. We need to know if you actually qualify for this particular job. So don't forget your academic history. And it should also have, if you have professional qualifications, if you have any skills, please make sure that you actually put them on your CV. And some people will forget about putting any awards or any accomplishments that they might have attained, during their tenure, let's say at an institution of academic, or maybe they've worked before and they had success in that organization. Sometimes people just forget to put such things. So any accomplishments that you've realized throughout your life, you need to actually put them, because you stand out by what you are putting, the additional information that you're putting. And then if you belong to any professional associations, or sometimes some people write articles, you need to actually include them or to give them a link of where they are. And also, when you've actually put that, and also a CV should have that information. It's like an introduction, and then a body, and then obviously your salutation, the end, of who you are. And then some people would like to put hobbies or their interest of whatever they want to do, but that is optional as well. And any references that you want to put, it's also optional. But normally, I don't tell people to actually put references, because the references will be provided, especially when you're called for an interview. Because if, let's say, you are working and you've provided references, sometimes employers overlook that and they call your employer whom you're currently working for. So it jeopardizes your chances now, and employer knows that you're actually looking for a job. So references can actually be provided during an interview. So those are some of the things that you need to put in your CV. So it's your contact information, academic history, professional qualifications, any publications that you may have written, and hobbies or interests. And like I said, references can actually be provided when you actually go for your interview. So though, in a nutshell, that's what should be contained in a CV.
That's super interesting, Lillian. That part about the references is definitely new to me, but good information there. And then you did touch on this a little bit, but what do you have any other tips for making your CV stand out when applying for a job?
Okay, Angie, one thing that we all need to know that these days companies may not be hiring, but maybe there are job openings that are there and you're applying for a job. So why not stand out? Why should you disqualify yourself because of the way that you've constructed your CV or your cover letter? So what makes you stand out in a cover letter or a CV is how you construct these letters or how you format these letters. And also what is contained in your cover letter, what is contained in your CV. Because you may have the best drafted cover letter or the best drafted CV, but if what is contained in those letters does not bring out the best of who you are, then all you're doing is like writing a fiction book. So what makes you stand out is how it is formatted and what also is contained in those documents. Because poorly written documents will disqualify you for the job, and yet you could actually be the best fit. So, and remember, Angie, the world is not looking for you, but it is what you carry inside of you and how you then articulate it in your CV and in your cover letter. How you articulate what you're carrying on paper is what makes you stand out. And it should actually make sense to the reader. And also, even your introduction letters, these letters, they must make sense to the reader. It must grab the attention of the reader. It must actually present you as a culture fit into that particular organization that you're applying for. So those things, when you want to stand out, you need to align your cover letter. You need to align your CV to what the potential employers are looking for. So that's how you stand out.
Great advice, Lillian. Definitely attention to detail of the utmost importance. I couldn't agree more. And we have touched on the next question a bit with regards to not including references on your CV. But is there anything else that job applicants shouldn't include in their CV?
True, Angie, there's a few things that we see on CVs that shouldn't be there. For instance, a badly formatted CV. I mean, if you are competing with the whole world and then you go and format your CV in such a way that when I just look at it, I don't want to read it. And bear in mind that these days, because companies are trying to cut down on costs, so before they even print your CV, if they print it, they will read it on screen. So you need to say to yourself, how is my CV looking if somebody was actually to read it on a screen? The other thing is, sometimes people write these long, waffly CVs or cover letters. I just want to say, please keep your CV to the point. Write what you're supposed to be putting to the point, because sometimes what you carry inside, your skills, your qualifications, everything is muzzled because you are being waffly and your CV is too long. Potential employers don't have time to be reading long CVs. So provide relevant information. And sometimes we put those personal things like, yeah, how many dogs you have, how many cats you have. Those things should not actually be on a CV. It's not necessary. So it's important to understand that, there's some personal things that should not go on a CV. And then wrong spellings, punctuation, and those grammatical errors. You need to double check your CV or your cover letter. And using unnecessary jargon, ensure that you're writing in the correct tense, in terms of, whether you're using past tense or present tense. If you're using third person, you need to stick to it throughout your whole document. And the other thing that should be on a CV or cover letter, do not lie or give misleading information, because recruiters can actually spot that information that is not stacking out. For example, like sometimes you inflate your qualifications, you inflate your salaries, your job titles, or even your achievements. We can actually pick it that you are right, you are lying, and and these days, there's so many ways of actually double checking if the information that you're providing is the right one. So try and avoid lying or misleading information, because they will definitely, potential employers will actually do a Google check on you, or they have other platforms that they will look for the right information as far as you are concerned. And also references, you don't have to include references to your CVs, because like I said, references can actually be requested in an interview. And then also, one of the things that we've actually seen, when people write meaningless introductions, try and avoid those meaningless introductions where a whole paragraph is about you. I am a go-getter. I am dynamic. I am, those things of blah, 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 blah. Those flattering introductions are not necessary. And we can actually see that this is just flattering language. So try and avoid it as much as you can. So in a nutshell, I'll say your CV should actually stand out, and you get noticed by what is contained. So let's not write unnecessary things in your CV, and that way you actually stand out for you to be invited for an interview.
Great advice, Lillian, once again. And then in terms of the best way to submit a CV, what are your tips for the actual submission process, the best way to go about it, and then also the follow-up process after that? What advice do you have for job applicants when following up after they've applied?
Sure, and one thing that I will just say is that it's important, yes, to make follow-ups, but sometimes we make follow-ups in the wrong way. So the first thing that I just want to say is that before you even submit your CV, make sure that you are following the right instructions, because potential employers, when they send out, say, a job advert, they will tell you how to submit your CV. So there are certain instructions that they will actually give you. But if you do not follow those instructions, that's one way employers eliminate people that they don't need in their organization. So this is how they narrow their search for the right candidate. So for instance, sometimes they'll put a reference, and they will say, you need to quote this reference. If you do not follow those instructions, then your CV is kicked out before you even apply for that job. And if they say to you, we need a 2-pager CV, make sure that you then back to your CV and you put the information that is required, and you submit a 2-pager like what they are looking for. Employers will sometimes put a caption stating that if you've not heard from them by such and such a date, then maybe you may not have qualified for that particular job. If you then want to phone them and do all sorts of things, that's also a disqualification. So this is how sometimes employers would eliminate you from the very onset before you apply for that position. So follow up on instructions. Follow those instructions to the T, so that at least you can submit your CV, and then they can actually read your CV if then you have followed instructions. So I think one thing that we need to understand is that when there's a job advert, there's so many applications that actually go through. People are applying for positions. So potential employers will receive as many. And because of time constraints, they protect themselves by putting those instructions. So you need to always follow instructions, and also remain professional. Even if you're making a follow-up of how your CV went, or if you want to understand the status of your CV, maybe sometimes you may want to do it telephonically, or you want to do it via email. It's always important to remain professional. Even if it's somebody that you know, even if you're close to that person, please remain professional in everything that you do. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't get the feedback from potential employers maybe feedback for your CV that you've submitted. We need to just understand that we must just count our losses, because some companies will not actually come back to you. And then you need to just focus on applying for other opportunities. So you must never stop applying for opportunities, even if some companies have not come back to you.
Well, that's excellent advice. As I've mentioned throughout this interview, Lillian, a lot that I've learned for sure, and I'm sure that our audience will also agree. There's a lot that we didn't know. So thank you so much again for your expert advice, and thank you for joining us again on the show. That's a wrap for today. And with thanks to Lillian for joining us, and to the IIE Rosebank College for making it possible. It's Biz Takeouts. Take it where you like it, when you like it. See you soon.